So, in the midst of a big weekend of boxing going on that's featuring uh, fights of great significance as well as world championship fights pretty much across the globe, there's going to be a number of big fights happening in Japan, both on Saturday and on Sunday. And that's what this video is primarily going to be about. Chief among them, of course, are Naoya Inoue's possible final defense of his WBO super flyweight title before he comes to the United States, where he'll either be, as long as he wins anyway, he'll either be defending once again his super flyweight title here in the U.S. for his debut here, or possibly even be moving up to bantamweight and doing some things there. Also, there's going to be Hassan and Dam versus Ryota Murata on a separate card that's going to be on Saturday. The Inoue fight will be on Sunday. But before I even get to those cards, I wanted to make mention of Kosei Tanaka, the WBO light flyweight champion, defending his title against 16 and 0 with 16 knockouts, Angela Costa. It's going to be over there in Aichi, Japan. And this fight in particular, I wanted to make mention of first because of the fact that there is actually going to be a completely legitimate English speaking, English language stream for this fight, international stream put on by CBC, which I think is really great stuff to see. I'm going to definitely put a link in the description. I'll put links to all the fights in the description, of course, as I normally do. But this one is completely clean and free, and no need to like freak out about anything with regards to potential legalities of it. And it's going to be, definitely a good fight. I think that's going to happen between these two guys. Kosei Tanaka is 8-0 with 5 knockouts. He's now a two-weight champion. Of course, he was a world champ at 105 pounds at first. Had a couple of good fights there. He won the title and then he defended it once. Then had basically a stay busy fight at flyweight, basically. Weighed 110 and a quarter pounds, so he didn't completely weigh in at the 112-pound limit. And then he dropped back down to light flyweight, settled in at light flyweight this past New Year's against Moises Fuentes, which interestingly enough was actually on a similar stream as this English language one that's going to be coming up by CBC. They broadcast this one as well on the internet live, and that was really just a fantastic win for Kosei Tanaka. Definitely a breakout performance as far as he's concerned. Back when he had first won his title against Julian Yedras, I was thinking, you know what, this is a pretty good young fighter. May have a pretty bright future ahead of him. I wasn't necessarily either way on him with regards to thinking that he was this great fighter or thinking that he was kind of a weak champion. I was thinking, okay, well, we'll see what's to come from him. And then when he fought Vic Saludar, I was thinking like, wow, like he barely won that fight. Like he had to come back and dig deep in order to win that fight. This wound up stopping Saludar in the 6th round in a fight that he was losing. He was losing basically every round, and Saludar dropped him, and he gutted down and bit down and got out of it. But after that, with the way that he was able to dispatch of Rene Patilano in dominant fashion, and then Moises Fuentes in even more dominant fashion, I was starting to think. I've been starting to think differently about him. Before the Fuentes fight, he was talking about wanting to win world titles in 5 different weight classes, and before that fight, I was thinking like, wow, like I kind of doubt that that's going to be able to happen because the way that he went back and forth life and death with Soledad, I was thinking, yeah, this is a guy that he'll make for some fun fights, but he's not going to be like a truly like elite level fighter with for longevity's sake or in terms of really excelling above and beyond. But I mean, the way that he dispatched of Fuentes was definitely above and beyond. Fuentes had only had recent loss to Dani Nietes. Before that, it took Nietes 9 rounds, or I mean, technically it took him 21 rounds because their first fight wound up being a majority draw. The second fight, Nietes was able to stop Fuentes after 9 rounds. But Kosei Tanaka, and that was even a tough fight as well. But Kosei Tanaka just completely took this guy apart, beat him down, busted him up, and stopped him in the 5th round. Just an absolutely tremendous performance from Tanaka. And this is a guy in Fuentes who himself was a former champion at 105. Other previous losses were, I mean, his only other previous loss, even to aside from the Nietes loss, was to Juan Hernandez, who is now the WBC flyweight champion. So I mean, it just goes to show the level of quality that he was, just generally speaking. So Tanaka, he's going to be fighting Angel Acosta, of course. This is a big step for Acosta in particular, considering the fact that he's pretty much fought, the journeyman of the division. Managed to get himself ranked in there, and now he's going to be fighting against Tanaka. He's a 16-0 with 16 knockouts, so he definitely believes in his power. As I mentioned before, Tanaka has been hurt before, so I think this is definitely going to be a puncher's fight. This is going to be an all-out, the bomb fest between these two. Acosta, he has a slight height disadvantage, but their reach is about the same. They're pretty much about even, I'd say, in terms of just general physicality and height, reach, muscle mass, strength, and all that stuff. I'd say Acosta might be a little bit stronger in terms of being able to kind of like bully Tanaka around. But at the same time, I'm kind of judging that based off of Tanaka's fight with Soledad. I mean, since he moved up to 108, I definitely think he's more lively. I think at 105, he was just draining himself too much to make the weight in order to keep himself in optimal shape, where he's able to really like move around properly. And it's almost like that feeling you get like where after you ran for a long time and like your legs are weak. It's like he had that weak-leggedness to him at 105 pounds. Whereas at 108, he seems a lot just more fleet-footed, a lot more energetic. Like he hasn't been starving for several days in order to make the weight. Like he managed to get the carbohydrates back in his body in order to perform in a proper fashion. But that'll be it for my preview of that particular fight. Moving on, I also wanted to make mention of the other card that's taking place on Saturday, which is in Tokyo, Japan. It's going to feature 3 World Championship fights. Interestingly enough, the 3 fighters from Japan are actually all coming in as the challengers for these fights. So Japan is definitely looking at themselves as the underdogs in these fights going into Saturday. First off among them is Ryota Murata, who is challenging Hassan Endam for Endam's, actually it's now the vacant WBA regular title, I guess. The WBA decided to get rid of Endam's interim title that he won against Alfonso Blanco last year by brutal first round knockout of the year candidate right there for Hassan Endam. And Endam versus Murata is a really good fight, I think. Murata has definitely taken a big step up. He's pretty much been beaten down, knocking out a lot of the journeymen, the tomato cans along the way, basically. So there's a big step up for him, but I think he's definitely ready for it. I mean, I could see this being a really good fight between these two. Hassan Endam, otherwise, even in his losses, has put up really competitive fights against the likes of David Lemieux and Peter Quillen. So, I mean, if Ryota Murata is able to even duplicate what they did, I think that just shows you, he has a pretty high level of class to him. If he's able to beat him more comprehensively than that, then I definitely think that would show him to be a proper challenger for the likes of Canelo or Triple G, considering the fact that the winner of this fight will be the mandatory for the Alvarez versus Golovkin winner. So hopefully it all turns out as I'm speaking about, just by virtue of the fact that the winner would be an opponent for that level of fighter. And I think that both of those guys, like the likes of them, and the likes of the winner of a fight between those two, I think are clearly beyond the Hassan and Dom level of opponent. But we shall see. Who knows? Maybe he's managed to improve some things. As for the other fights, I believe right after the Endam Murata fight is going to be Ganigan Lopez versus Ken Shiro. Ganigan Lopez will be defending his WBC light flyweight championship. Lopez, along with Tanaka, to me is basically the cream of the crop at 108 pounds. Has really great wins under his belt. The one recent loss that he's had was to Pedro Guevara, who himself was a champion. Guevara wound up losing a close decision to Yu Kimura. And then Ganigan Lopez went over to Japan, completely schooled Kimura. And, of course, he recently also, right after that, a few months after that, was able to defend that title against Jonathan Takoning. Really difficult fighter to fight. He's pretty slick and throws a lot of punches. I mean, it's interesting because you normally at least don't associate, a real slick fighter with like a high volume guy. But I mean, he does have a good bit of volume on him. It's almost like he'll be able to slip your punches, he'll combo you, and then like he'll be so close to you that a lot of times like fighters will wind up clinching him just because of the fact that it's like he's out of range, he's in range, and then he's like all the way so close to you that you'd have to wind up smothering yourself, which is interesting because I mean he definitely has a height advantage over most of his opponents. Ken Shiro is a pretty solid young prospect out of Japan, 9-0 with 5 knockouts. This is a big step up for him. I'm not sure if he's really ready for this level yet though. I think he's a pretty good boxer puncher, but I think that Lopez, just generally speaking, is really a level above anybody that Kenshiro's, or several levels above anybody that Kenshiro has fought. And Kenshiro doesn't seem to do any particular things that are really like exceptional. I think he's a pretty um, well-rounded fighter, but I don't think he has like that exceptional quality to like push him above and beyond in this fight against Lopez. I think Lopez is gonna wind up outboxing him. And then headlining the card is Juan Hernandez Navarrette versus Daigo Higa. Higa is an interesting one because very similar to Angel Acosta, he has a perfect knockout record, 12-0 with 12 knockouts, and he's going to be going in there against the champion, Juan Hernandez Navarrete, the WBC flyweight champion, who of course just won against Naoya Inoue a few months back. I covered that fight in detail. And that was the belt. That was the fight basically to decide who was going to be the new title holder, since Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez vacated that belt. Um, but Hernandez did really, really good in that fight. It was kind of a back and forth fight for the 3 rounds that it lasted. It didn't last particularly long, but I mean, Nawapan was landing a couple of good right hands. Choritos managed to kind of keep him at bay generally. Even though had a big height and reach disadvantage, he definitely had a big speed advantage, both of hand and foot. I think he'll definitely have a big speed advantage here against Daigo Higa, but I mean, Higa cracks really hard, so it's really tough to exactly say. I'd favor Hernandez because of the fact that Higa, I think, can lunge a little bit. I think he kind of reaches in a little bit too much, and that Hernandez's speed will kind of win him the day, and his just general better judgment of distance. But I'd say that Higa is a little bit more textbook, technically sound than Hernandez. He almost kind of reminds me of like a little Golovkin, like the way he kind of places his punches, kind of comes forward, is able to cut off the ring really well. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to cut off the ring quick enough against Hernandez though, and I might actually even call him like a poor man's Golovkin style, really, Higa. But he's only 21. He definitely has room to develop. And who knows? Maybe he'll wind up proving me wrong. I would favor Hernandez here, but I'm not completely counting Higa out. At least not even as much as I'm kind of counting Kenshiro out against Lopez. I definitely favor Lopez fairly comfortably. I think that Ryota Murata has a good chance against Endam, and I'd say Higa stands a fairly solid chance against Choritos, even though I favor Choritos Hernandez in that fight. Then on May 21st, on Sunday, there's also going to be a card from Tokyo, Japan, featuring Naoya Inoue against Ricardo Rodriguez. Inoue, of course, as I mentioned from the jump, going to be defending his WBO Super Flyweight title against Ricardo Rodriguez. He was a WBO, I think, number 2 or number 3 ranked fighter, so he's basically trying to clear the way so that he can pretty much have his choice of opponent this fall when he winds up making his U.S. debut, ostensibly. Ricardo Rodriguez, he's a fairly solid contender, a guy whose main losses were recently to David Carmona, 2 losses, 1 unanimous decision, 1 split decision. 2 very close fights though, and actually I think the first fight is here on YouTube, so I might actually even toss that link in the description so you guys can get a look at Rodriguez if you'd like to go in here against Inoue. He's a pretty solid fighter, pretty solid general fundamental skills, but I think that Inoue is really a special fighter. A special fighter just generally speaking. He's a pound for pounder. I think both in the eye test and in what he's managed to prove thus far. Just the fact that he was so dominant at 108 and has been pretty much dominant at 115 against the guys that he's been fighting. Not necessarily like the likes of a Gonzalez or a Sisaket or a Quadras, but guys at the very least just slightly below that level. But just generally a pretty dominant fighter, and I definitely expect him to take care of business here against Rodriguez before he winds up making his debut this fall, and hopefully gets it cracking, gets it popping over here in the United States. As well on that card is going to be Akira Yaegashi, who is going to be defending his IBF light flyweight title against Milan Melindo. Melindo managed to win this, a shot at this fight, or excuse me, a shot at this belt back in November against Tirapong Taila. Really solid fight between those two, and I think that this fight can be a very good one. I'd say that this one is probably going to be going to decision. Another guy has like a real knockout record to speak of, particularly. But I mean, Yaegashi is a high volume guy with high speed. Milan Melindo is a little bit more methodical. That's his name, the Method Man, and has good timing. But I think these two match up fairly well, and I slightly favor Yaegashi. But I think that's all for this one, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Links in the description. Peace.